When it comes to self-development and integration, no matter the method you use, the vital point is to practice. Welcome to the Vital Point podcast, where you'll learn simple methods to transform your life, hear the stories of practitioners who are doing the work so that you feel inspired to go and practice yourself, and really connect into the sacred aspect of life that's all around us all the time. You know, when I say simple practices, there's this thing in self-development about simple, not easy. You know, meditation is simple, not easy. A lot of these things that we talk about on the show are simple, not always easy. And they're simple because, like, it seems like too good to be true. You know, it's like, oh no, it seems so profound. It must be more complicated, but really it's simple. And the answers are simply all around us when we start to see that. So we're going to talk about some simple, not easy things today as well, not to get off on a tangent. This is going to be another solo episode. I wanted to share about something that's really been alive to me recently, which is this idea of the technology of the sacred and the work of Dr. Stan Grof and what it means to you. Before we get into that, though, I just want to invite you, if you haven't already, to make sure you're subscribed or following the show on whatever platform you're consuming it on. There's been a few episodes recently that have been solo episodes. I'm working on a couple really good episodes with guests right now for you. Language of Breath author Jesse Coomer, one of my favorite books over the last year, and one of my somatic experiencing mentors and someone that I am honored to consider a friend, Rachel Broom. So recently there's just been this phrase that has been sticking in my mind, which is the technology of the sacred. You may be aware that I've been training to become certified in holotropic breathwork, which is one of the legacies of Dr. Stan Grof. And the more that I've learned about Stan and the more that I've studied, the more things just make sense to me. When I first decided to pivot from strictly doing breathwork into more of an integration coaching type role, I really struggled because I didn't want to be the psychedelics guy. I didn't want to just work with people that were interested in doing psychedelics, because although psychedelics and plant medicines are extremely efficient catalysts for change, they're not the only method for transformation. And when we even talk about, you know, things like non-ordinary states of consciousness or expanded states of consciousness, a lot of people tend to jump right to thinking about psychedelics, but that's really only one part of this vast ocean, if you will, of, you know, different practices and methods for accessing a greater, bigger view of reality. And Stan, Dr. Grof, has been so influential and instrumental in expanding that lens. One of the things that he's known for is called the cartography of the psyche, which is this expanded view. It's almost, you know, it's a map, right? Cartography is a map. It's an expanded map of consciousness. And before Stan and before some of the other transpersonal psychologists that, you know, started transpersonal psychology with him, Abraham Maslow, and I'm not, you know, so well versed on the academic side of it. I feel more on the experiential part. But, you know, before these guys came around, it was mostly Freud, and it was all biographical, and, you know, the things that happened to you as a baby, and the, you know, sexual drives, and, you know, all this stuff tied back to a few different touch points. And then Stan came along and like widened the lens substantially, right? He brought in the exploration of the perinatal, the experiences that we had during the birthing process that have left us with subtle imprints and traumas and things that come up when we are in expanded states of consciousness, as well as how that connects to the transpersonal dimension of life, the spiritual dimension, how that interacts with the spiritual traditions throughout history and different cultures. And recently I've been reading one of his books called The Transpersonal Vision, and he started talking about this concept called technology of the sacred as a way of exploring and describing these ancient methods that have been reliably used throughout history for accessing these expanded states, and the cultures that were working with them for growth and for healing and for accessing a deeper part of humanity, and also something beyond humanity, like going into exploration of the soul, or of the great mystery, or of our connection to something that's bigger than us. And when I heard technology of the sacred, it just made so much sense to me, because for the last couple of years, like I said, I've been trying to figure out, like, well, if I say breath work, I don't necessarily only want people that are interested in breath work. And if I say psychedelics, I don't want to limit myself to people that are just interested in psychedelics. To me, there's this huge amount of overlap between these modalities, and working with breathwork can deepen and expand and help you work with psychedelics or plant medicines in so many different ways, right? Like, if you are new to this world and you're curious and you're exploring and you like haven't had an experience yet because it's illegal and you're worried about that, or because of cost, or you're worried about that, or just you're worried about surrender and losing control of yourself to a medicine that's going to be in control, for hours and hours and hours, like some of these medicines can be. And by the way, this is a very real, legitimate, common thing that I hear in my work. Well, breathwork can be a really great tool to help to guide you into the deeper waters, right? Like, there's no point in going miles out in the ocean when we can start at the shoreline and help you feel more comfortable and more safe getting into deeper water. Alternatively, if you're already working with psychedelics and plant medicine, breathwork can deepen the integration process. It can help you get back into that expanded state in a way that's reliable, that's more grounded, that's accessible, right? You don't have to like go and sit in a ceremony all weekend, or, fly to Peru, or, remote parts of Mexico, wherever it is that you're going for your medicine work. In my experience, and I see this a lot in my clients, is there's this recognition when they come out of the breathwork space that they were someplace that's very similar, if not the exact same, as maybe something that they experienced on their ayahuasca journey, or in, working with mushrooms, right? So there's so much synergy, but it's hard to put that into a digestible format. Everything is so short these days. Our attention span's getting shorter. People need these ideas to be very accessible and digestible. And that's something that I've struggled with, is how to explain and how to have the language to attract and bring in the people that are interested in working in this lane that I feel very comfortable in, and that I feel very comfortable helping people in, and that I know from past results, not only for myself, but with clients, that I can help with. So technology of the sacred really covers that to a large degree. And so I've just been really, really loving it. And it really If we wanted to define it, it's these methods that have been used for thousands of years across different cultures to reliably access expanded states. And so what are those technologies of the sacred? Well, I would say the first one is the breath. That is something that is constant across multiple cultures. We could also include plant medicine and psychedelics. And then a few others that I would throw in there are somatics and movement, right? So you think about yoga, you think about the somatic types of therapies that are becoming more popular as people realize the value in them for working through trauma and redefining the way that you experience life. Meditation, and also the drum and rattle. You know, music in general, this is a topic I could talk about forever. Music for working in expanded states of consciousness and the value of it. But let's just strip it back to its fundamentals. You know, there's a reason why these instruments show up in different types of ceremonies. In the ayahuasca space, in the shamanic ceremonies. When you go to a holotropic breathwork session, you know, the first hour is like percussion, driving, evocative, you know, stirring up the energy percussion. It's hypnotic, it's entrancing. It helps you, it helps the veil between the hylotropic, which is like the day-to-day reality that we all live in and, you know, to go to work in and pay our taxes in and buy groceries and all that. And the holotropic, which is the more expanded state, this deeper part of consciousness. So it really bridges the gap between these two dimensions of life. So that's kind of an overview. And if you're enjoying this, if this is resonating, if you're intrigued, I'd love to invite you to a free workshop and start to explore how to integrate it into your life on September 12th. That's going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific time. You can sign up at lu.ma/Blue Magic Alchemy. And even if you're listening to this, you know, later on, you know, somewhere down the road, still go to lu.ma/Blue Magic Alchemy. I often run multiple versions of workshops. And so, yeah, I would still make sure that you check this out. So there's sort of three different points that have been really alive to me as I've just been eating up this phrase, technology of the sacred, and really leaning into it as a way of like, okay, great. This feels helpful to me in merging or widening the scope of talking about expanded states of consciousness to be inclusive of not only breathwork, but psychedelics and plant medicines. So the first one I already started to mention, right, is that right now, psychedelics, plant medicines, they are very popular. They're en vogue for the healing and transformational potential. And that makes sense because they are extremely transformational. Peter Levine referred to them as catalysts for change in a recent podcast that I listened to with him on Psychedelics Today. Stan Grof refers to them in several different places as non-specific amplifiers. So for sure, psychedelics and plant medicines are very powerful tools for creating change in your life. And I would also invite you not to limit yourself, not thinking that they're the only way to expand your consciousness, not thinking that they're the only way to evolve or to create transformation. I think that some of that comes from our Western modern culture and the allopathic Western medical model, where the doctor is basically just throwing pills at you for just about everything. And that pill does all the work. And it's more deeper ingrained than that. I mean, think about, you know, I've seen thousands of beer commercials at this point, right? Where, you know, life's kind of mundane and boring, and then somebody cracks a beer and all of a sudden there's like a party and beautiful women in bikinis throwing themselves at, you know, men, and like everything is just rocking and crazy, and that totally happens, right? So again, it's like, oh, just drink beer and your life gets better, right? And the same thing is, you know, you have some sort of illness or something wrong with you, and you go to the doctor and they give you a pill. That's not how psychedelics work. That's not how plant medicines work. Non-specific amplifier, right? The medicine is going to shine this light on what needs to change, what is out of alignment. It's really going to help you communicate with your true self without some of the filters or guards that you might normally have up. And let's face it, the breath has been used throughout history as a way of accessing these same types of states with shamanic practices, right? Through yoga, through meditation. Stan Grof talks about these different examples, like, for instance, in Greek, the word pneuma means breath and spirit. In Sanskrit, prana means breath and spirit. Hebrew, the word ruach means breath and spirit. Chinese, the word chi means breath and spirit. And there's so many more examples, right? We could start talking about Latin and inspire. So these concepts of breath and spirit are so tightly linked together across multiple cultures and multiple times. And so I really think that we're doing ourselves a disservice by focusing so much on the psychedelic and plant medicine aspect. And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from the healing and transformational power of these medicines. And we're also giving our sovereignty away when we sort of give all the power or all the responsibility to the plant. Another big difference, and a reason that I resonate with breathwork in particular, and trust me, like, I love plant medicines. I love psychedelics. I still work with them. I think they're incredibly transformational. And I've had big shifts in my life with the support of integrating my experiences. And when you are able to access expanded states in breathwork, there's nothing but you, as opposed to working with a medicine that has its own agenda and is going to override your tolerance, your capacity, your nervous system, just based on the fact that you took a certain amount. So again, this is another reason to include breathwork in your psychedelic integration toolkit as a part of your own inner work. The other thing I would like to mention is just an acknowledgement that we in this sort of mainstream Western post-industrial revolution culture, capitalism, whatever you want to describe it as, the hubris, the absolute arrogance that we have that we're somehow more evolved or we're the best, or these cultures that I'm naming that have always worked with the spiritual aspect and the transpersonal and the shamanic, that somehow those cultures were less refined or less evolved than we are. Like, despite all of the technology and modern convenience and all the amazing things that we're living with right now, we have never been so disconnected from the sacred dimension of life. We're the only society in history that hasn't valued these holotropic states, that hasn't made room for the visionary and the direct experience of the spiritual. The closest thing maybe that we have to it in the mainstream is religion, where it's being watered down, it's being mitigated and controlled through a third party that's a human being. And look at how that's turned out. You know, religion has been the, you know, catalyst for war and oppression and horrible atrocities, in addition to a method for connecting to the divine. So maybe we don't have all the answers. And maybe it's because one of the things that happens when you start to work and experience expanded states of consciousness is that the bullshit that we've been sold and fed our entire lives, the programming, starts to fall away. You start to see it for what it is, that we're not meant to, you know, go to school all day and then be prepared to sit in a cubicle or a factory or whatever. Like we're not here to work. We're here to live. We're here to experience. We're here to evolve and grow. And I mean, that's one of my earliest memories of taking psychedelics, of taking LSD, is like the expansion of what life really is and what it means, and that there's so much more than the brainwashing that we go through the mass media, through the education system, through a lot of the employment system, all these systems that are set up to really keep us in line and conformed to a particular viewpoint, a particular way of living, where we can be more easily manipulated for somebody else's gain, where we stay sick, or we stay eating shitty food, where you stay in that job that you hate, or that situation that you're not happy with, instead of being more honest with yourself about what you want your life to be like and what you want to get out of life. So maybe there's an agenda about why we shouldn't have access to these types of thoughts or experiences, because it keeps the wheel moving forward. I don't know, just a thought. And then to add on to that, it's incredible to me that there are, when we say technology of the sacred, one of the things that I take away from that is that there are systems and there are traditions working with those systems on how to use that technology. You know, you can have something like think about a great technology that we have now, right? If you don't have somebody to show you how to use it, if you don't have somebody mentoring you through it, if you don't have access to like watching YouTube videos or something where you can learn more about how to use that technology, you may be using only a percentage of what's actually possible. You might not even be using the technology in the right way. So I think the work of Stan really illustrates this. For me, studying his work, in a way, it's been like being handed a map to a place that I've already explored partially and going, wow, this is so much bigger than I realized and that I explored before. And there's even parts in the areas I have explored that I've completely missed, or I, didn't check out, or I didn't even know about. And so it's so much bigger. It's more engaging. It's more like, it's vast. It reminds me of, the analogy of the blind men and the elephant, where each blind man is holding on to a different part of the elephant and just, the elephant is like this, you know, it's like the trunk, or it's like the leg, or it's like the body, it's like the ear, it's like the tusk, right? Instead of having a whole picture of the entire elephant. And in my opinion, Stan is one of the only people who's really mapped out a more complete version of this great mystery, while also acknowledging that it is a great mystery and it is beyond comprehension to some degree. Not only that, that there are communities and traditions of people that are interested in and have been working with these technologies of the sacred, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do it all alone. And there's this big push for whatever reason in a lot of people that I see in the healing and psychedelic community, where there's like this almost pushing away the lineage and pushing away the guru and the teacher. And that's part of their trip. It's part of their journey. If that's how you feel, like, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I get, you know, people wanting to re-empower themselves, and there's a lot of abuse and misuse of that power by some of these gurus. In my life, there's been a huge benefit in following traditions and following lineages. I say it during almost every single meditation class that I teach, that it's a miracle that the lineage of meditation that I practice has been passed down from teacher to student for over 2,500 years. And not when I could just open my phone and go to YouTube and like find 1,000 different meditations, right? This was passed for a long, long time from the mind of the teacher, the realization that the teacher has gained through their experience, to the ear of the student. And then that process of alchemy begins again, and it, you know, and has continued until this day, until there was a book, until it was written down, until it was online, all these things, you know? I mean, I've been studying Tibetan Buddhism for like 20 years. It's always been this miracle to me, you know, reading the stories of the lineage holders, these people that risked their life and went on these incredibly long, like sometimes years at a time, journeys from Tibet to India to find teachers, to find the Dharma. And then they risked their lives again, bringing it back to Tibet. And like, how much were they actually carrying? Versus I can pull my phone out of my pocket and in a matter of seconds, pull up all that information. Wow. That's amazing. And this is something I always think about it's in Be Here Now by Ram Dass, is painted cakes don't cure hunger. You know, David Nichtern, who's one of my current meditation teachers and 2-time guest of the podcast, you know, he says like meditation's like a recipe, you know, and giving somebody a recipe doesn't make them less hungry. You got to cook it up for yourself. So there's this invitation with these technologies of the sacred that we need to integrate them. We need to practice them. It's not enough to just know the code. You got to put it into practice. And that's one of the things that I really focus on in the Elevate coaching program. And you may have heard me talk about this before. This is we're getting ready to run the 3rd version of it. It's an 8-session program that's designed for people to learn how to better integrate these technologies of the sacred. So if you want to work with psychedelics and plant medicines, it's going to give you tools to help you do that better, to have more presence, to be more in your body, to know how to regulate your nervous system. By the way, all of these are great even if you don't care about psychedelics and plant medicines. Halfway through the elevate container, we take a little bit of a turn and we start to move into more expanded states of consciousness. Well, what if you could access these states without a psychedelic? What if you could just breathe your way into it? Well, the answer is you can. And this is one of the things that I love to teach because it's been so transformative to me. So, better integration, deeper integration, more familiarity with psychedelic states, and more importantly, how to work with those and integrate them. I'm super excited to get this third version going, and I would love to see you at our upcoming workshop. It's called Transform Your World, Technology of the Sacred, Integration for Insight and Inner Elevation. And it's really all about unlocking the power of breathwork and unlocking these technologies, connecting with them in a very experiential way, in a way that you can start to apply them in your life for your own inner work, for your own development and growth and transformation. So I really hope to see you there. You can go to lu.ma/Blue Magic Alchemy to sign up. Again, it's free. You'll get the replay if you sign up for it. Regardless of whether that workshop's passed, if you have questions about this, hit me up. I'm probably doing another program. This is the third time this year that I'm launching this, and it won't be the last. And thank you so much for checking out this podcast. I so appreciate your support. I so appreciate you listening to the show. I've had a couple people in the last few weeks tell me that they've been listening to the podcast from the beginning, which is both a little scary and overwhelming and also very humbling. So make sure that you're following. If you could leave us a rating, if you could share the show with a friend, all those things are free ways that really help the show grow and get in front of more ears and get more people, exposed to these amazing modalities for transformation and change. So I'll leave it there. Remember, it's not about the method that you're choosing or really the pace at which you're traveling. The vital point is to show up for yourself consistently and practice. It's not the destination, it's the journey that really matters. And I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you. Please don't hesitate to reach out and connect. I read all my emails. I read all my messages. There's no team as of right now. It's just me. So thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next episode, keep exploring, keep growing, and above all, keep practicing, because that's the vital point.